Hey, 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 how are y'all doing? Sorry, I got caught up listening to Todd being a complete and total cunt. Hang on. I'm gonna go over there and tell his people there's a better show over here. All right. If anybody can see it. He likes to hide me. Yeah, but he was be pretty much ass about Jeff and shit. And I don't know why, but I feel like I feel very protective of Jeff for some reason. Um, Maybe the dad instinct in me. I don't know. Let me get. I'm trying to get my lighting right. Ugh, that don't work. Yeah, he brought up his Jeff's wife a few times too, so that really got me. Um, let's see. Oh, and take note that the great nomad, the nomad fixed the take. Did you see it? My the bum, bum, bum. All right, we're gonna hit chapter 3. I did a outaging um um podcast, but not podcast. I did a short on the chapter 10 of the Tao Te Ching. Sorry, I had to take him out of my ear. It was getting entirely too annoying. Hey, Linda, Nomad, Mrs. Metcalf, Freddie, Freedom Fighter, Sherry Tilly. Hey, okay. We got our great usuals in here. All right. Hey, Florida Beach girl. So, chapter 3, the rules made to be broken. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and bad things still happened. Clint Van Winkle, combat veteran, Iraq. It's near the end of their 12 weeks of Paris Island boot camp, and the Marine recruits are struggling, wading through muddy South Carolina water with rifles held high, desperately heaving themselves over walls, squirming under barbed wire, and being blasted with the soundtrack of the opening minutes of Saving Private Ryan. That would suck. The roar of battle, exploding shells, the snap and squeak of rifle rounds, bellowing sergeants, red-hot machine gun slugs thudding in the flesh, and the screams of gruesomely wounded men. Here, actual drill sergeants are yelling at the recruits, "Move it, move it, move it, move it. Come on, recruit, get your butt over the wall." Up next, a grueling overnight march with 45-pound rucksacks. It's the culmination of their final exercise. 2.5 days of hell when the drill sergeants kept them short of food and sleep, driving them day and night through exhausting obstacle courses. It will end as those recruits who've not fallen out struggle in the parade ground at dawn, standing at weary attention to receive their coveted eagle, globe, and anchor insignia, and hear a senior officer declare them United States Marines. They'll summon up their last reserves of strength and sprint for an all-you-can-eat breakfast of steak and eggs. Not a bad breakfast after you've been exhausted in the crucible. So I hear. From Marine buddies. The next morning, here they are, all fresh and laundered, their burning resentment of the drill sergeants now coupled with beaming pride. They're coming to a trot down Paris Island's Boulevard de France, a blur of olive drab PT shorts and tees, shouting cadence from their precise ranks as they stream past the families gathered on the sidewalk. Before Stephen Canty got to Afghanistan, he and Darren Doss, Chuck Newton, Nick Rudolph, and the others who would fight together in Charlie 1-6 endured the privations of boot camp and celebrated with this formation run for Family Day and the graduation ceremony on the following day. It happens like clockwork, 40 times a year. Here are as young Americans are processed into the Corps. For graduation, the visitors' parking lot is crammed with families emerging from vans and pickups with license plates from New Jersey and Indiana and Louisiana. The dads in pressed jeans and boots. Ew. Grandpas with their Korean war veteran ball caps. Lots of Mom of a Marine t-shirts and girlfriends decked out in frilly dresses to kill outfits with shouts of "There he is," the families strained to gawk at the miraculous transformation of the awkward teens they sent here 3 months ago into the tightly focused warriors now marching out in immaculate formations onto the parade field. It's a proud and painful scene to watch, with the flag snapping in the breeze and the Sousa marches blaring from the loudspeakers that bring the audience roaring to its feet. But there is an undertone. The toughness these new Marines displace is thin, fresh, and uncured. After all, it's been only 84 days since they arrived as nervous, self-conscious civilian recruits. Nick Rudolph, like many others, rode a Marine Corps bus to get here in early 2008, a grim 16-hour ordeal with one youngster already broken, weeping softly far in the back seat. But recruit training is only the first step of what is arguably the best combat training in the world. Young men and women go on from this and other Marine and Army recruit training bases to more advanced tactical field work, mastering the techniques of warfighting and leadership. far beyond what I've seen of other nations' military forces. They learn to kill, but nothing here and there or in their formal training prepares them for the acute moral dilemmas they will face in war. Hey, Justin. Marine boot camp and Army basic are famously rigorous, and by the end, the recruits or boots have become lean and hard. They grow used to being shouted at. They learn to work in teams, to obey orders without hesitation or question, to shout back, "Aye, sir," in unison, to fire an assault rifle at human silhouette targets. They march in close order drill, demonstrate how to treat a sucking chest wound, and fight one another with pugil sticks and boxing gloves. They're constantly urged to emulate the heroes who have gone before them and reminded that they are preparing to fight and win no matter the cost. The weaker ones are bullied and grow protective calluses, or they may recycle and start over. It's all part of building what the military calls resilience. It's a catch-all word that encompasses the physical and mental toughening meant to stiffen recruits' outer shells, like body armor against the physical and mental challenges of war. Oh, while I'm taking a break, my oops, I need to turn this off for this to be effective. My eldest got me this. I do appreciate it. If she sees this after work. They wouldn't let us use pugil sticks when I was in damn charm school bullshit. Oh man, we wore ourselves out with the pugil sticks. We were pretty brutal to each other. Boot camp and Army basic aren't just body and mind toughening. The long days are laced with lessons on morality and values. Drill instructors teach a rigid moral code of honor, courage, and commitment. The goal, according to the Marine Corps, is to produce young men and women thoroughly indoctrinated in love of Corps and country, the epitome of personal character, selflessness, and the military virtue. The Army's ethics codes are similar, demanding that soldiers live the values of its loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, integrity, and personal courage. He got it wrong, and I can't say it any other way. It's been indoctrinated into me too much. So, but because it's the acronym leadership, right? Loyalty, duty, respect, integrity, personal courage, and selfless service. That's the way. I just mixed it up. But anyway, in everything you do, and always to do what's right, legally and morally. Loyalty, integrity, virtue, all of these may sound like the ideals by which most of us hope to live. But the military's ethics codes have to be more exacting. They are issued to each recruit along with the means, the training, and eventually the authorization to kill. Success on the battlefield, accomplishing the mission, may call for the suspension of basic notions of civilian morality, such as the idea that it's wrong to kill a child. That is why the military backs up its lists of values with requirement for rigid and unquestioning discipline and obedience to orders. Every Army recruit is required to memorize and recite on order the soldier's creed. I wouldn't be able to do that. I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined physically, mentally, tough, trained, and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I think Richard needs to hear this. Todd may need to hear it now. You may want to cite me, Todd. I am an expert and I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier. Marine recruits bellow out the 3 Marine values, sometimes while doing push-ups. The first is honor. This is the bedrock of our character. It is the quality that empowers Marines to exemplify the ultimate in ethical and moral behavior. To never lie, cheat, or steal, to abide by an uncompromising code of integrity, to respect human dignity, and to have respect and concern for each other. Hoorah. But make no mistake, along with promising to respect human dignity, Marine recruits are expected to be fighters, memorizing and internalizing the rifleman's creed. It is a bellicose call to arms, but notice it never uses the word kill to describe the act for which every Marine is recruited, trained, and deployed. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. Without me, my rifle is useless. Without my rifle, I am useless. I must fire my rifle true. I must shoot straighter than the enemy who is trying to kill me. I must shoot him before he shoots me. I will. My rifle and I know what counts in war is not the rounds we fire, the noise of our burst, or the smoke we make. We know that it is the hits that count. We will hit. My rifle is human, even as I am human, because it is my life. Thus, I will learn it as a brother. I will learn its weaknesses, its strength, its parts, its accessories, its sights, and its barrels. Hey, Billy Cox. I will keep my rifle clean and ready, even as I am clean and ready. We will become part of each other. Before God, I swear this is my creed. My rifle and I are the defenders of my country. We are the masters of our enemy. We are the saviors of my life. So be it until victory is America's and there is no enemy. Yeah, I heard him respond to you on a couple of things. So I put up that there was a better show over here, but I don't guess it was seen. So good to see you over here, though, Billy. Spider Dog, howdy. Did you get timed out or blocked? Fort lost in the woods for my daughter, and parking was horrific. Spotted a place and parked not long after I was approached and kindly told them, ooh, those CEOs, they like their parking spots. To civilians, all this may sound either appalling or ridiculous. In the confusion of battle, when terror and a desperate instinct for self-preservation can dominate, it is neither. If the military can be said to equip its warriors with a kind of emotional armor, this is it. I've heard them mutter the words in times of crisis, and I've watched them struggle to use these values in practice. Curiously, though, none of this training prepares them to manage the moral challenges of warfare that everyone else knows is coming. It's an odd oversight. Recruits are taught to yank a tourniquet tight in the spurting stump of their own arm after an IED blast. They're not introduced to the idea that they must have to deal with their own moral injuries. Nothing in what the military teaches recruits about behavior in war instructs them to recognize in the chaos and confusion what's right. Paint the bushes green. Or the Sergeant Majors were always worse for me. Oh, except on Fort Huachuca, my first assignment there, the CG's wife was hell on everybody about lawns. I mean, it was insane how bad she was about lawns there. They are required to master the complex process of assaulting and clearing a 3-story house held by the enemy, and even the greenest privates memorize the 9-line radio message that will summon a helicopter to evacuate a casualty. They are taught to field strip and reassemble a M60 machine gun while drill sergeants bellow at them, and to use topographic map and compass to find their way in the dark through miles of wooded hills. They're not taught how to think about the challenging moral terrain of war. Much less how to navigate it safely. Marines who were taught at Paris Island to memorize, respect, human dignity as a bedrock Marine value got to Afghanistan only to find themselves assigned to fight alongside and protect Afghan soldiers who were said to be using small boys as sex toys. More challenging after boot camp, they will find who are said to be. Let's put that. Not all. More challenging after boot camp, they will find themselves killing without being helped to understand whether or not that violates the Old Testament commandment, thou shalt not kill. That's the Hebrew Bible, sir, not an Old Testament. It's current to me. Oh, Freddie. Kathy, your avatar is the same color as Freddie, so I just saw the color. Sorry. That was Kathy Colby at Fort Leonard Wood. Kathy, I would have said that I'm a CEO confused operator. Thank you. As Army Chaplain Paul D. Fritz explains, the institution demands moral excellence of soldiers in order to maintain discipline, but at the same time requires that combatants be prepared to perform the morally injurious act of killing human beings. Like Nick Rudolph, Cindy O. Martz learned these same rules and values and recited the same creeds in Marine boot camp. He never shot a child, though sometimes he wonders if he should have. His moral injury still pains him every day. Cindio is a handsome, stocky man with a gentle demeanor and a quick laugh. We first talked around a picnic table outside the Wounded Warrior Barracks at Camp Lejeune, a neat 3-story brick building with manicured lawns. He addressed me repeatedly as Sir. Born in Haiti, Cindio was adopted by an Illinois couple and homeschooled in an environment of loving support and high expectations. Before he enlisted in 2006, he'd done 2 years of college studying early childhood education, then worked with teenagers just out of prison. When he told his parents he'd decided to join the Marines, they advised against it. The Marines were too tough, they thought. Wrong answer. Tough was what he wanted. And shortly, he was on his way to Marine boot camp. This time to the West Coast version of Paris Island at San Diego. It was tough, and he loved it. A lot of the Marine Corps values matched up with what I had already had, he told me. Being completely responsible, disciplined, loyal, training together to where you have trust in the other people to do what they're supposed to do. At San Diego, he carried around what the Marines refer to as the Book of Knowledge, a list of character building guidelines on how you are supposed to conduct yourself. My book, the book they gave us in the Army, fell the frig apart. I studied that thing like a nerd. You get that in training in the beginning. Then you get to prove yourself and your worthiness for the next rank by how you took those basics and applied them. He said, I thought it all made sense because that's how my parents raised me. In all the throngs of young men and women who have passed through Marine boot camp, there have been perhaps few who absorbed the toughening and internalized the rules and values more seriously and thoroughly and eagerly than young Cindio Martz. He was the kind of brand new Marine about whom the drill sergeants would boast. Now there's a Marine. I'd go to war with that guy. Private First Class Martz was deployed right away to Fallujah. Billy, I don't know about you, but the spelling of Fallujah bothers me here. It's bothered me this whole book. In 2006, a hard combat tour, the city was blown to shreds, is how Cindio described it. He was assigned as the turret gunner on a gun truck, crouching his body armor, helmet, scarf, and goggles, and swiveling to target insurgents with his mounted 50 cal machine gun. You got to stand up there. A lot of the attacks were on gunners, so our anxiety was very high, he said. His commander once told him his job was to take one for the team. It was life on the edge. The next moment couldn't hold boredom, the crack of a sniper rifle, or seeing your buddy's legs blown off. You feel an invisible hand controlling stuff that you don't know nothing about, Cindio said. But at the same time, you got rules you got to follow because we are representing the U.S. nation. That falls under honor and courage. He did well, as the drill sergeants had expected. Promoted to corporal, he went again to Iraq in 2008, around the time I was in Afghanistan with 1-6. On his return, Cindio re-enlisted, made sergeant, got married, and had a child on the way before his third combat deployment. Oh, shit. I don't like where this is going. In 2010. In 2010, this time it was to Afghanistan, and he was assigned to lead 11 Marines as a squad leader. Parents and girlfriends and wives gathered at Camp Lejeune to see them all. They were talking to me, saying, like, make sure you bring my boy back and keep my boy safe, Cindio fidgeted. all the way on the long plane ride to Afghanistan. Bringing all his guys back safe was his responsibility. And it was a pretty high order, he thought, thinking back to the Marines he'd seen die in combat, even guys you thought were invincible, guys who followed all the rules. He thought about all the near misses, the sniper shots, the IED blast that just missed his men, and he felt this good luck was accumulating day by day, mounting up on one side of a dangerously overbalanced ledger, and now they were headed back to Kajaki Dam in southern Afghanistan's Helmand province. Right. After I didn't have any soldiers after I made E6. I was operating on pretty much on my own. I was being passed around to unit after unit. But as a staff sergeant and staff sergeant, it is a heavy task to carry. At max, I had 182 people in my in my response. They were my responsibility completely. Freaking as a E6, I don't know how I ended up with that, but it was a weird time. Plus, I was managing 25 Reapers, two hunter companies, and then all other unmanned systems. Yeah. I mean, I've heard it from the families, Mrs. Metcalf. That's kind of why I went down this weird area, because I kind of got bogged down. But yeah, I mean, that's tough. I was older. This guy seems like he is a young guy, so really, really tough for a younger guy. So an area whose arid, rolling grassland was notorious for Taliban ambushes and the deadly pressure detonated IED. A footstep would close its circuit and ignite its charge. Cindio vowed to put his faith in God and in the values and rules he had learned in boot camp. Oh, I know where I was going with that. I was going with when the ledger's stacked so far in your favor, some shit's bound to it just gets scary. That shit's bound to happen. Treat everyone with respect and dignity. Accomplish the mission. He could feel himself rigid with stress. Discipline, honor, courage. Martz and his Marines got to Kajaki around the same time as Chuck Newton, Darren Doss, Stephen Canty, and the rest of 1-6 were arriving in Marja, and also in Afghanistan's Helmand province. Helmand was a bitch just the whole damn time. Kajaki was as bad as Martz had anticipated. Fighting was constant. Close-in gun battles, IED blasts, long-range artillery barrages, mortar duels, and airstrikes. It was exhilarating and terrifying. I don't think I've ever been so stressed in my life, Cindio said. Patrols twice a day with his riflemen, plus attached specialist engineers, intel guys, bomb disposal experts, sometimes a forward air controller, the occasional reporter or visiting general, and some Afghan soldiers. Cindio was responsible for them all. I'd never been put in a position where I had so many souls in my charge. See, just like I was saying, I could have just read a little ahead instead of getting in my head so much. Wandering around on foot and you don't know where the next bomb is. You really have to watch the villagers where one day there's a field with a bunch of people working and the next day you do a patrol and there's no one there. A common indication of imminent trouble. What's up, Angry Vet? Good to have you here. Love you, bud. Appreciate the shout out. So that's a common indication of imminent trouble. He sighed heavily, and I have to be the one directing these guys where they had to go. And I don't know where anything is. I can't say to my guys, don't go there. There's a bomb over there. Stay away, and there's a guy over there, and make sure you watch and don't get shot. He paused and took a deep breath as he recalled the scene to me. Cindio was getting agitated, his words tumbling out. Thank you for tickling the algorithm, buddy. You only have control over your guys. In the heat of it all, you only have the control over your guys, and you are praying the decision you make is the right one. And if it's the wrong one, which a couple of my decisions were the wrong ones, you are paying the price and you're living with it. He was thinking of the day when his squad was patrolling with another unit and buried a 60-pound IED, was command detonated beneath them, meaning that someone was watching and fired the device at the moment there would be cause maximum casualties. The blast knocked Cindio and his guys unconscious and wounded, some severely. When he came to, he found that no one in his squad was dead, but some Marines in the accompanying squad had been killed instantly, and the others had lost legs and arms. What's up, Lee Steele? Good to see you. Cindio ordered medevacs for the wounded, passing up medical help for himself. Just because you get banged up a bit doesn't mean you can take you out of the game. He explained, I am not a quitter. He quickly organized a defense perimeter and sent for reinforcement. It was just a catastrophic, but as a leader, you can't. I wasn't allowed and couldn't allow myself to crumble under the pressure or just give in to depression or despair. He said, as a leader, you can't show a sign of weakness to your men. In the following days, they had to go out again and again. I had issues, but I could hide them. He said, I had some semblance of control. My fear was that they'd take me away from my men because, as bad as it was, no one wanted to leave. This is true. It's the whole brotherhood thing. The courage and commitment it took to go back out there, knowing it could be you next, is really profound. After someone gets hurt, I was scared out there, but I had to go back out. It's the honor among men that we weren't going to quit. It's what you learn in boot camp. In the blast in Kajaki, Martz and his men suffered mild traumatic brain injuries and assorted other injuries. But the moral damage was worse than that. Earlier, they had befriended a young Afghan boy who would come around their forward operating base, trying out his English and bringing bread and other gifts. In return, they gave him books and candy. The boy eventually would turn in villagers' weapons and would point out places where IEDs had been planted. Then one day he disappeared. A few days later, he came the IED blast. Soon they found out it had been the boy himself who set off the charge. And that discovery demolished their trust, soured their relations with the Afghans, and led some to question what the hell they were doing there anyway. We've all experienced that thought, I think. And then post 2021, we definitely all faced that. To have the same kid turn around and blow you up. Your trust has been ruined and broken, Cindio told me. It shatters your reality of what's okay and what's not okay. Cindio toughed it out. He followed the rules. He was that Marine who made his drill sergeants proud. He came home with mild traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and other conditions. But he felt the moral injuries caused his sense of dislocation, bitterness, bits and pieces of his old moral certainties, and the newer realities of battle added up to a disjointed sense of himself. Like a Picasso portrait, the rules and values had gotten him through combat. But when he got home, he said, it's a different story. Even though you're home, you don't feel at home. You don't feel safe. That was the case for me. And you become reserved when you try to talk to someone. They don't understand. They start making their own assumptions about you, like, well, I don't think we should have been fighting that war in the first place. Really? What you learn in boot camp, that you're not doing it for the money, but because you want to serve and protect your country. It takes a long time to come back full circle and realize, why do I care? The majority of civilians don't understand and don't care. We had brothers die in our arms. We picked up the pieces of people. All the stuff you've seen and done, you went there with friends, but came back without them. There's a guy who was killed back there who had a 1-year-old son, and he's never going to see the light of day again, you know. Back home at Camp Lejeune, Cindio found himself replaying the IED blast detonated by the kid over and over in his mind, wondering what he should have done differently. The only people you can trust, he decided, are the guys you went and came back with. Hey, Jenny, how are you doing? Doing good. Thank you. As part of his treatment for traumatic brain injury, he was assigned a therapist. Memories of the IED blast, his wounded soldiers, and the treachery of that young kid haunted him. I constantly replay every decision I made out there. He told her, I'm just kind of stuck in a revolving, recurring thing, dreams and doubts. Cindio's most acute moral injury was in the way he now felt about children. He and other Marines sometimes experienced powerful impulses of murderous anger toward the Afghan kids who they believed were being used by the Taliban to spy on them, help plant and detonate IEDs, carry ammunition during running firefights, and even fire at them directly. Remember Nick, who had to deal with that 12 or 13-year-old kid. I'm still dealing with the effects of that set of moral issues. Oh, dang. Praying for your power to stay on and everything to be well, Jenny. Cindy L. told me 5 years after the 2010 IED blast, I hate being around children because a child attacked me in my squad. I deal with the moral issue of whether or not I should engage or shoot a child who is causing a very real threat or action toward us. Even today, medically retired from the military and at home in North Carolina, he said he has a hard time seeing children in a different light, I know they are innocent, but over there, they are used as tools, spies. Do you want to attack a child even though a child is shooting at you? Is it right to end their existence? That was the kind of moral struggle that we dealt with on a regular basis. Cindy O. Martz has 3 children of his own, all young girls. That's where my moral conflict comes in, he said. That's a struggle right there. I love them very much. I don't have any problem with my own children. It's with the other children, the same age or older. I just don't trust the innocence of children. Birthday parties, family outings in the park, going to movies together, even attending his oldest daughter's dance recitals. He avoids them all. It's sad that I can't give my kids what my parents gave me, he said. Years of therapy have helped. One counselor tried to reassure him that he'd done the best he could, that he couldn't have foreseen the IED blast, that actually all his guys did come back. And even if all your guys do come back, it's you still have the fact that you know that others didn't. He saw the other squad's guys have a couple of guys KIA. But Cindy O was thinking, all my guys got hurt and I let them down. And I'm angry because it's something I wasn't fully prepared for. And you start questioning, why did I do this? Yep. And since you brought that up, Mrs. Metcalf, your mental injuries, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, are physical injuries. They do change the neural firing of your brain, and I think that the VA and the Department of Defense need to come to grips with that. It does. 2 seconds ago, I knew the terms I wanted to use, but it does. I had a therapist say that a traumatic event. This can be any traumatic event. Doesn't have to be military, but we are dealing with military PTSD right now. A traumatic event does more to change your brain in that moment than 20 years of life does. So, I mean, for whatever that's worth, right? Yep. So, and I'm angry because it's something I wasn't fully prepared for. And you start questioning, why did I do this? Did you change your avatar again, Billy? It tests the foundations of your faith. What was this war all about? Guys got hurt for just doing their jobs and trying to save others. I question that. I had very angry talks with God, but at the same time, whenever we survived a close call, I thank God for it. But after 5 years, Cindy O'March is beginning to heal. He found therapists who were also in Iraq, were also Iraq war veterans to help him with his TBI and PTSD. That's the best. Um, finding people who were in similar circumstances as you is a big help. He's gone back to school studying psychology with the intention of becoming a mental health counselor for other combat veterans. I really need to get my master's. What's helping him the most is his community of other combat veterans. You talk to your guys, and it's kind of reassuring to know that what you're going through, this guy is going through. ILMAC. Let's see. ILMAC. I love myself and I am capable. Capable of all before and all to be after. I like that, Blue Steel. Let me grab that real quick. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Okay. So it's okay. I'm not losing my mind, he said. You kind of reassure each other that we're not going insane. Lamarche was in Kajaki in 2010, struggling with the morality of children at war. The Marines of Charlie 16 and Marja were engaged in a different kind of moral struggle, one in which the rules and values they'd memorized in boot camp seemed at best irrelevant to the reality of war. Canty, who has a way of turning things over and over in his mind, trying to make sense of his experiences, once told me about manning a vehicle checkpoint. Hey, Joey Simpson, how are you, buddy? Exactly, Mrs. McCall. You don't talk about it back in the day. Why do you think they never told anyone a story about what they were going through? People would have you in the mental state hospital. Yeah, exactly, Freddie. Hey, has anybody heard from old guy Mitch? I hadn't seen him around in a while. Kind of worried about him. Doing the Thorazine shuffle. Drive safe, Joey. He and other Marines were supposed to be working with an Afghan National Army unit, training and mentoring Afghan soldiers and sharing living quarters with them. Oh, okay. Good. I just checking on him. I just thought of him. One day along came a middle-aged Afghan man on a moped with two little boys on the back with their faces and necks and arms blotched with darkening bruises. The kids had makeup on and mascara was running because they were crying. The Marines knew they'd been raped. So you check them. Canty said of the man and boys, and they have no weapons. And by our mission here, they're good to go. They're okay. And we're supposed to keep going on missions with these guys. Seeing that kind of stuff, he said, your morals start to degrade. Your values do change real quickly. War is morally corrosive, not just for grunts like Cindy O'Martz and Stephen Canty. The generation of Americans who fought, thanks, Freddie, I appreciate it. The generations of Americans who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan did so under a military high command that was thrashing its own code of ethics in an astonishing and demoralizing display, where some grunts have wondered was the ultimate in ethical and moral behavior. When George W. Bush administration based its decision to invade Iraq on fabricated and widely debunked at the time that Saddam was harboring nuclear weapons and building an unholy alliance with Al Qaeda. Where were the military values when the U.S. military authorities oversaw the atrocities and notorious Abu Ghraib detention center and other detainee abuses? A lot to, yeah, it's very disgusting, Joey. And earlier I said some, not all, but it is a yeah, and we let that be we being the United States of America, the people who put us in those places knew full well of what what all of that was, right? Um, so yes, we knew, some of us knew, and some of us, and some people didn't care that there weren't weapons of mass destruction. Um, Bush was a puppet. Cheney should have been. Rumsfeld should have been. Uh, Bush should have been, but they were the two major pushers of it. There was no Al Qaeda alliance until we started to muck things up. I mean, Izzy might have something different to say. I mean, she grew up in Baghdad, but from what I saw intelligence wise, that is my that was my assessment. That was why I got in trouble. Because I yelled at people. Then you get to Abu Ghraib, and a specialist gets punished for it, not any of the senior leaders who should have been punished for it. So in 2007, shortly after Canty had finished memorizing military creeds and rules at Paris Island and was able to recite them in a parade ground yell, Army Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Jordan was dismissed from a military courtroom at Fort Meade, Maryland, and told to go home. Jordan, a heavyset, balding 50-year-old Army reservist, had been a commander at Abu Ghraib and was the only officer ever criminally charged with offenses relating to the abuse and torture of Iraqi men at the prison. After most of the charges against him were dropped on technicalities, Jordan had been convicted of disobeying an order not to discuss the case outside of the courtroom. Okay, Freddie. From the highest levels of the Defense Department down to the lowly enlisted soldiers, the treatment of Iraqi detainees at Abu Ghraib and the official response to public disclosures of the scandal amounted to a squalid evasion of a moral responsibility. Under policy set and approved by the supervised by the chain of command that ran from the senior U.S. commander in Iraq, General Ricardo Sanchez, Lieutenant General. I forgot. He was to the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld. U.S. Army prison guards and interrogators were breaking chemical lights and pouring the phosphoric liquid on detainees, pouring cold water on naked detainees, beating detainees with a broom handle and a chair, threatening male detainees with rape, allowing a military police guard to stitch the wound of a detainee who was injured after being slammed against the wall in his cell, sodomizing a detainee with a chemical light and perhaps a broomstick, and using military working dogs to frighten and intimidate detainees with threats of attack, and in one instance, actually biting a detainee. The investigation was ordered, but not by Rumsfeld or the Pentagon, but by Sanchez, the U.S. Central Command and regional military headquarters. Hey, plug the patriarchy. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, plug the patriarchy. If you haven't, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Sanchez appointed Major General Antio Taguba to head the investigation, but dictated that the investigation be confined to alleged wrongdoing by junior soldiers. Senior officers and policymakers were not to be investigated. Oh, hope the squid's doing good. See there? I mean, that's only by junior soldiers, senior officers, and policymakers were not to be investigated. The Defense Department sought to suppress news of the atrocities at Abu Ghraib, but once it leaked out, Pentagon officials professed to be stunned by the revelations. It breaks our hearts that, in fact, someone did say, "Wait, look, this is terrible. We need to do something," Rumsfeld told a congressional committee after he saw Taguba report. I wish we had known more sooner and been able to tell you more sooner, but we didn't. That's like his known truths and unknown truths, right? I wish we'd have been able to tell you more sooner. It tells on himself quite a bit. After that guileless remark, Taguba told journalist Seymour Hersh of the New Yorker that a lot of people are lying to protect themselves. From what I knew, troops don't just take it upon themselves to initiate what they did without any form of knowledge of the higher ups. But, he added, I was legally prevented from further investigation into higher authority. 92 low ranking enlisted soldiers were convicted of abuses. The most senior soldier convicted was a staff sergeant, precisely halfway up the enlisted rank ladder from private. Sanchez, nominally in charge of the prison, was allowed to quietly retire, as were the other senior commanders. No one in Washington was officially accused of wrongdoing, while Canty and tens of thousands of other young Americans were headed into war to do their best with duty, honor, courage, doing what is right. The war's entire chain of command evaded responsibility for the most damaging atrocities of war. But that is always the case. That subtext was mine. But more moral rot was becoming evident. As a rising Army star, Brigadier General Jeffrey Sinclair admitted to military charges of adultery, improper relationships with female subordinates, and other violations. He tearfully pleaded for leniency from a military court and was allowed to retire at a slightly lower rank, keeping his military pension and benefits. Now, let's discuss this. When you retire from the military in the generation that he and I came in, you were high three. So he was getting paid as an average of your three highest years of pay. So he was probably a 1-star those full 3 years. So if he was forced to retire as a lieutenant colonel, big whoop. You only get lieutenant colonel on your retiree card. Then you get his pension stays the same. So meh. Low rank, keeping his military pension and benefits. William Kip Ward, a 4-star Army general, was forced to retire after investigators found a pattern of lavish and improper spending. While Marines and I were sleeping in the rain and eating cauliflower and potato hash for dinner in western Iraq, Ward was billing the government for personal travel and lavish hotel suites and having his staff take his wife shopping to a spa, among other acts of misconduct detailed by the Pentagon's Inspector General. Ward was ordered to repay $82,000, but he was allowed to retire as a 3-star, collecting an annual pension of $208,802. In 2010, while Stephen Canty and his buddies were fighting in Marja, Gary Alexander, a senior employer of Navy Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command, was sentenced to 75 months in prison after admitting that he accepted $400,000 in cash bribes in a contract award scheme. Go figure. Air Force missile launch. Air Force missile launch officers were found cheating on exams, as were Navy sailors training on nuclear reactor operations. Excuse me, sorry. As were Navy sailors training on nuclear reactor operations. 3 Navy admirals were censured and allowed to retire after investigations found they had accepted gifts and sexual favors from a ship provisions contractor known as Fat Leonard. I think the Fat Leonard trial just ended. I forget what his sentence was. In the ongoing investigation, another naval officer admitting having accepted cash bribes, luxury hotel vacations, and the services of a prostitute. A top military ethicist, Don M. Schneider of the Army's Strategic Studies Institute, fuckers, and professor emeritus at West Point, observed that the moral standards of the U.S. military profession had been deeply corroded by a decade of war. That was in, obviously. Sorry, going live at 6:15 for a few. I've been exposed. Okay, I'll be done with this in 1 minute. So let me run through this. U.S. military profession had been deeply corroded by a decade of war. How else, he thundered in a November 2012 essay for the Institute to account for the yet uncontrolled escalation and suicides among the military, that unprofessional levels of sexual harassment and assault within the ranks, the spiked divorce rate in the military families, the high rates of toxic leadership and command and resulting reliefs for cause, the eruption of high-profile corruption and misconduct case forced General Martin Dempsey, then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to order in late December 2012 that all officers undergo new training to reinforce the military's values. But the problem went much deeper than a few sensational cases. The pressure of war had warped the moral code of the Army's officers' ranks, and lying had become not just common, but essential, according to the study by the U.S. Army War College, published in 2025. Oh no, you've been exposed. Leonard Wong and Stephen J. Garris confirmed what warfighters like Cindy O. Martz and Nick Rudolph knew from experience, that while they were struggling to apply their moral codes to the chaos of combat, those above them were blatantly violating the military's own moral code of values, both to accomplish their mission for their own career advancement, certifying, for instance, that understrength battalions were fully manned, that vehicles all had passed the required maintenance checks, or that soldiers had been adequately trained when, in fact, there was insufficient time before deployment. After 14 years of high-stress wars, the War College study found Army officers have become ethically numb. Sadly, much of the deception that occurs in the profession of arms is encouraged and sanctioned by the military institution as a result. Untruthfulness is surprisingly common in the U.S. military, even though members of the profession are loath to admit it. It was a damning indictment of an institution that claimed to be built on high moral values, yet pinning the blame on officers who set aside the code of ethics is letting the institution off too easy. A trio of Army officers wrote in Military Review, the Army's professional journal on the art and science of land warfare, The military's values themselves are the source of the trouble, wrote Lieutenant Peter Fromm, a retired officer who taught ethics at West Point. Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Pryor, an intelligence officer serving at the Pentagon, and Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Cutright, a graduate of the Army's elite School of Advanced Military Studies, who also taught ethics at West Point. By requiring strict adherence to its values, the three officers argued the Army contributes to self-deception by convincing people that they are good and ethical member of a values-based organization, even though the Army does very little to actually encourage the right action. For example, they wrote, until the Detainee Treatment Act of 2005 made enhanced interrogation illegal, one could employ Army values to endorse harsh treatment of detainees. Those who used to torture could argue they displayed loyalty to their nation and fellow troops by helping extract intelligence that might save lives. They could display adherence to duty, country, and selfless service by their hard, dirty work for good ends. In fact, they wrote, it's hard to think any tough ethical problem that Army values could help a soldier actually resolve. By sloganeering its values, the military has, in effect, provided moral cover for almost any act, lying, for instance, to protect one's fellow soldiers and to accomplish the mission. Army values, they wrote, can actually set the stage for unethical action by inspiring moral complacency and allowing us to justify nearly any action that appears legal. During my combat deployments, Pryor wrote elsewhere, I never once witnessed a staff debate about the perceived justice of an act unless a lawyer says a tactic is illegal. The typical U.S. military leader believes he or she has the moral green light to do it. Put another way, the military's own values thrust its troops into conditions of intolerable moral dissonance. Alyssa Peterson, a Mormon with a degree in psychology, was a young Arabic-speaking intelligence specialist with the 101st Airborne Division, assigned to interrogate Iraqi prisoners inside the detainee cage at the U.S. base at Tel Afar in northern Iraq. According to reporting by Kevin Elston, the public radio station KNOW, Flagstaff, Arizona, Peterson's hometown, she refused to participate further after only 2 nights of interrogations. Elston reported that an Army investigation found that Peterson had been reprimanded for showing empathy for the prisoners, echoing the dislocation many warriors experience as they straddle the separate moral worlds of war and home. She told Army investigators that she did not know how to be two people. She could not be one person in the cage and another outside the wire. She was reassigned to guard duty and sent to suicide prevention training. But on the night of September 15th, 2003, she killed herself with her service rifle. She was 27. As the wars deepened, the military continued to demand that its recruits memorize high moral standards and rules, and the American public continued to believe the military acted on a higher moral plane than they did. Few spoke of the reality. The whole moral code thing is bullshit, a fake, Stephen Canty said to me one day recently. Looking back on his 2 tours in Afghanistan, things are more complicated. All right, let's go over and see what Jeff has to say, y'all. Sorry for the roughness at the end. I'll see y'all over there and see what's going on. Bye.